This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of March 10th, 2024. Content authenticity statement. This week, 100% of this newsletter was generated by me, the human, despite my best efforts to the contrary. I was actually trying to use AI to write it, and maybe we'll talk about that in one of this week's episodes on the channel. But for right now, 100% of this newsletter is mine. Learn why this kind of disclosure is important. There's a link at the top of the newsletter. It is legally required in some places, and it's a good idea as a best practice. So, what's on my mind this week? The intelligence revolution. This week, let's talk about the future of work and AI, something I call the intelligence revolution, so named because it's as big a deal as the Industrial Revolution, and here's why. The intelligence revolution fundamentally changes the nature of work. AI is to knowledge work what industrial machinery is to manual labor. The machines that do the majority of work, and then we supervise the machines. We run the machines, right? We don't need 1,000 people in a cornfield manually, removing ears of corn from corn stalks anymore. We have one machine driven by a guy who's probably listening to his favorite podcast as the GPS guides the machine, this massive machine down a crop field. If you've ever checked out what farm machinery is like today, it is crazy high tech. It is incredible. So let's take a brief walk down memory lane at the various revolutions through history. You had things like, the Stone Age, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, each of which lasted thousands of years. Then the Dark Ages, right? The Renaissance, and then more or less the modern era. What's worth pointing out in this big picture view of history is that the time between ages gets progressively shorter. We took thousands of years to figure out stuff like wheels, right, and iron and bronze. Our farms, over time gradually got more efficient, but over the span of generations. Here in the USA, which is where I'm based, we started as an agrarian nation. In 1790, more than 90% of the population worked in agriculture, right? Everyone was farming, just subsistence living. By 1900, a century and change later, that was 50% of the population, that's a big shift, but over the span of a century. By 1990, 200 years later, the percentage of the population that works in agriculture, 2%. Think about the modern digital age, right? The modern era. The first modern computer was built in 1943, the ENIAC, right? 33 years later, the Apple computer was invented, the Apple I in 1976, kicking off the personal computing revolution. 20 years after that, the internet really started to become prevalent with the invention of the World Wide Web. Email was a few years before that, but that started the internet revolution. I still remember reading articles saying, the internet thing, this thing's a fad. Like, okay, as you were distributing that on your fax machine. A decade later, social networks emerged en masse. If anyone remembers Friendster back in 2003, and then MySpace, and then Facebook. Less than a decade after that, smartphones, right? You had smartphones for things like smartphones like the BlackBerry for a while. And of course, the iPhone came out in 2007, the mobile revolution. And today, we are firmly in the early years of the intelligence revolution. You and I have been talking about machine learning and AI in some capacity since 2013. If you've hung out with me before in this newsletter, which, this newsletter is now, 14 years old? If you've maybe seen some of my AI talks at conferences like Inbound and Social Media Marketing World as early as 2015, 2016, we were talking about AI. We were talking about using AI for attribution analysis, using predictive analytics, way back at when. But with the advent of generative AI in 2017, with the Transformers model, and its explosion in popularity in 2022 with Stable Diffusion and later ChatGPT, we've had less than a decade since the last major revolution. This timing, this pacing is really important. In general, we humans are not great with rapid change. We're good at slow change, right? When the spinning jenny came out in 1764, it started to change textiles, but wasn't even patented until 1770. That's the thing that replaced spinning wheels and spinsters, right? It took decades for that profession to go away. When the typewriter emerged in 1829, it was widely panned because it barely worked. 38 years later, The Shoals typewriter actually typed things, right? The original was called a typographer, but it wasn't even for another 6 years until they fixed the keyboard because the keys kept running into each other. That's why you have a QWERTY keyboard, QWERTY on like North American English keyboards, because that's a legacy of typewriter keys running into each other. That was in the 1800s, right? It took 6 years till they fixed the keyboard. Think about that. It took the typewriter as much time to get a usable keyboard as we had between the mobile revolution and the intelligence revolution. Right? That's how fast things are moving right now. We had commercially accessible AI faster than we had a working keyboard on a typewriter. When change is slow, we adapt. Humans adapt. We leverage Joseph Schumpeter's principle of creative destruction, in which new innovations destroy the economy that gave rise to them, right? Replacing them with a new economy. Industrialization took on all the agrarian workers who were no longer needed in the fields, put them to work in factories and assembly lines, and we can discuss how nice those working conditions were, but that's where those workers went. What's critical is that industrial revolution took over a century, at least in America, to really make that full transition. America in 1790 was farming, and America in 1890 was making stuff, right? And factories and all sorts of things. And America in 1990 and today is in the service sector, providing services from call centers to flipping burgers to Google Analytics consulting. Again, that's a century-long transition. That's generations. We adapt. We can work with that. That's within our ability to change, right? Manufacturing peaked in the USA in 1944, while the service sector went from like 31% of the workforce in 1900 to 78% of the workforce a century later. Today, it's over 81% of the workforce. But again, that's a century. Right? Look at the timing. Service jobs took over from the Industrial Revolution over the span of a century. People adapted. People went into service jobs. The problem that AI poses isn't that it's going to destroy jobs or create jobs. That's going to happen with any technology that's as radical and transformative. The problem with AI is the speed at which it will do so. AI will do it really fast. We are starting to see today a transition into a different kind of service economy, one that is intangible. This is like Rory Sutherland's, Intangibles. Look at the enormous number of people in the media space right now. You and me, right here, right? On YouTube, right? This is a new economy. There are people, not me, but there are people making a living, in some cases a very good living, being professional YouTubers, running an OnlyFans account. Look at James Hoffman. He's made a YouTube channel solely about coffee and is cranking out tremendous audiences and things. And Google Foods has millions of subscribers, has a team of like 20 people working his YouTube channel. These folks are not making anything tangible, but they are creating value for their audiences, and their audiences are compensating them appropriately. As climate change, a swelling global population with over 8 billion people and a fixed amount of natural resources in the physical world all impose pressure on physical goods, it is logical that the intangible service economy is going to be the next step, but it's not happening fast enough. Not fast enough compared to what AI will do to the knowledge work sector. Again, farming and it got superseded by manufacturing. Knowledge work is going to be superseded by AI. Already, we saw it in the news this week. Companies like Klarna are touting just how fast their services will eliminate call center jobs entirely. They're saying, yeah, we're going to get rid of all service center jobs, right? They're going to save companies enormous amounts of money. They were boasting in their press release, their AI call center systems reduce call times, improve customer satisfaction, and cost a fraction of what human workers cost. No CFO, no COO is going to look at those metrics and stick with more expensive, less efficient, less satisfying options of humans, right? If the machine's doing a better job faster and cheaper, you'd be foolish to use the less effective option. That's logic, right? What this is going to create is a structural employment problem. Structural employment is when unemployment increases for jobs that never come back, right? Once a job vanishes, it's gone. And that person who is in that job has to find different work, a different profession, right? Horse and buggy drivers are mostly gone. Ice delivery salesmen are mostly gone. And there's an asterisk here, right? There are some exceptions. There's like artisanal ice delivery to bars for like $8 ice cubes. And there are horse and buggy drivers, right? They go downtown Boston. You can take a horse-drawn carriage ride, as a tourist, but those jobs are gone at scale, right? Telephone operators, gone. Elevator operators, the person who would pull the little switch and move the levers to make the elevator go, gone. Those jobs are gone, and they're never coming back at the same scale. The challenge for humans is, again, we don't change fast. If your trade vanishes, it is surprisingly difficult to change to something else that is radically different. There were a whole bunch of programs in the mid-2010s promising to retrain coal miners as coders, but those programs were, at least based on when I last looked, a couple hours ago at the news, those programs were largely ineffective, in part because the skill sets of the two professions are wildly different. Another major contributing factor was the programs were really poorly run, but, a person can change over time, but it takes longer than we'd expect, and it's going to take longer than AI takes to change, to adapt to taking over careers. So when AI sweeps in and starts eliminating jobs left and right in rapid fashion, and that's the key, rapid fashion, you're going to have a significant economic dislocation for a while. Companies who optimize for profits first, profits over people, they're going to wholly embrace AI. They're going to reduce headcount as fast as possible, just throw overboard as many employees as they can. And the new generation of jobs that are going to be created by AI will not ramp up as fast. You can see that if you look in the newsletter. There's a chart from Visual Capitalist that shows the percentage of people in the U.S. population in each job sector, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and so on. And you can see that in past revolutions, old jobs stuck around for decades after the revolution started. Right? There was time as new sectors ramped up. There's going to be less time this time around. Pop quiz. What do the French Revolution, Coxey's Army, the October Revolution, the Bonus Army March, Tiananmen Square, Argentinazo, Arab Spring, and Occupy Wall Street all have in common? They are all civil unrest responses to dire economic conditions, many of which were about rapid changes in employment. Right? This is the greatest short-term risk we face right now from AI. Already, income inequality is sky high around the world. It's not just one country, it's around the world. And this is compounding existing polarization. The haves and the have-nots are further apart than ever. The nature of AI, software that does human work but without human wages, means that income concentration becomes more problematic. A company that employs 100 people but can deploy AI software that can do the work of millions of people is going to concentrate a lot of wealth, a lot of income in a very small group. Those 100 people, that company, they're going to do real well. But the millions of people they displace will not. If that happens rapidly, say over the period of a few years, and structural employment goes up like 5 or 10%, civil unrest is likely. Civil unrest is more likely. And the faster that change happens, the faster unemployment goes up and stays high, the more likely civil unrest becomes. And in an already polarized environment, as we see in many nations around the world, that's gas on the fire, right? That civil unrest is likely to become violent. So, what's the solution? It's fine to lay out the problem, but if you don't have solutions, then you're just making people feel worse. So how do we solve for this before it becomes a crisis we can't prevent? I am not an economist. I am not a politician. I am a dude that works in marketing. But I do see 3 potential avenues we need to pursue at the individual level, at the organizational level, and at the societal level. How well we pursue these will dictate the outcomes we get. And I think they're decent solutions, and I would love to hear your thoughts as well. So let's look at the solution set that's easiest to do, the personal one. This is what you and me can do to prepare. Number 1, evaluate how much risk you personally are at. How much risk are you at? I said almost a decade ago that if you do your work with a template today, a machine does your work without you tomorrow, right? That is more true than ever. We are seeing that with language models. If your work is highly repetitive and templated, call centers, paralegal, customer service, if it's repetitive and templated, your job is in peril. There is no polite way to sugarcoat that. So what do? If it's an option for you, get skilled up with AI so that you're the one managing the machines, right? If you can do your work 10x faster with AI and you're very skilled with it, your individual job may be safe, even if your compatriots at your company are not, right? Your company is going to say, hey, we've got 10 people here, but this one person can do the job of all 10. We'll keep that one person and get rid of the other 9. It sucks, but you want to be that one person who the company says, you're the gal, we want you. If it's not an option to learn AI, start planning that career change. Look at jobs that are difficult to automate, work that is not templated. Trade jobs, for example, like the folks who come out twice a year to tune up my heating system from the local plumbing company. It's extremely difficult to automate that job. It's just not worth it. It's not worth building robots to do that, particularly with all the weird stuff that happens, right? Those jobs are likely to remain human for quite some time because there's just too many weird oddities that can go wrong. Personal services jobs, where you have a real relationship with your customers, will be difficult to automate because the human interaction, the human relationship is a part of the core value proposition, right? You go to your hairdresser or your fitness coach or your therapist, partly because they do a good job, but partly because you value that specific human relationship. You could not see yourself going to any other nail technician except that one person because you enjoy spending time with them, right? A machine can't do that. A machine might do a more precise job doing your nails, but it can't do that level of precision, right? Your barber, any barber can give you a shave and a cut. Is it your barber? And then there's the intangible jobs like YouTubers and OnlyFans and Patreon and all that stuff. Those are difficult to automate too for specific personal brands because the audience is invested in the person themselves. You follow someone like Morgan Eckroth, but specifically because you want to learn from her. You wouldn't follow a synthetic version, an AI-driven version, because it's the uniqueness of her humanity that makes her worth watching, right? It's the quirkiness, her sliding into frame and crashing into things on half of her videos. You're there for that uniquely human aspect. Side note, along those same lines, today you should be investing heavily time and effort in your personal brand to make yourself known in your career, in your company, in your industry, in your field to the best of your ability, because that is your lifeboat, right? That is your insurance policy, is having that audience that knows who you are, right? You and I would not be having this conversation if I didn't invest in my personal brand. And our relationship, you and I, has saved my bacon now quite a few times. And finally, on a personal level, treat AI like, hopefully, you treated COVID. Right? Do you remember 4 years ago? I know a lot of people prefer not to, but do you remember 4 years ago? Remember the newsletters I was sending out? Not this one, but the pandemic newsletter. We prepared. We stocked up. We battened down the hatches. We conserved our resources. We saved money. We deferred luxuries and purchases. And we bunkered down to weather the storm. This economic dislocation isn't any different. You don't have to wear a mask around AI, but it's not any different. If you think your current job and your overall employability is at risk from AI, behave accordingly. Make the most of your employment now while you pivot and develop those plans and conserve your resources as you do, right? Try running lean so that if things go south or they go sideways and your company's like, yeah, you've been replaced by AI, you're not surprised, and you've got some protection. You've got some backup funds to weather the storm while you look. The number of folks that I know in my personal network who are looking and have been looking for 9 months or more is substantial. So you want to make sure that be fiscally conservative. Next, let's talk about organizations, companies. AI will hit hardest at the companies where the leadership prioritizes profits over people, right? If a company says profits are more important than people, well, if a company behaves like that, because everyone says people are the most important thing, but very few companies actually behave that way. If you're at a company like that, your job is in peril, period. I don't care what your job is. A company run by people whose only priority is net profits is going to see everybody who's not in the C-suite as expendable and replaceable. I have worked for people like that. Everybody is just a cog in their machine, and all they care about is making the money, right? to the best of your ability, try not to work for companies like that. But if you are in the C-suite, or you are a business owner, or you have true managing authority at a company, take a look at your books, take a look at your finances. One of the things that I admire most about my business partner and my CEO, Katie Robert, she and I founded Trust Insights together. One of the things I admire most about her is how financially conservative she is. We run lean as a company. We don't pay ourselves, outlandish amounts of money. We pay ourselves basically what we have to, so that we have reserves to weather stormy times, right? That philosophy served us incredibly well during the pandemic. Had we not done so under her leadership, Trust Insights might not be in existence today. Right? That same fiscal conservatism also allows us to employ the people we do employ at sustained levels, rather than the boom and bust cycles that a lot of bigger companies that are less fiscally conservative go through all the time, right? They're hiring and firing. They're hiring, they're firing. It's like a binge drinker. If you're a business owner or a manager that prioritizes people over profits with the understanding that you still have to run a business, right? Can you commit to retraining and upskilling employees who are most at risk from AI? Can you run lean and run fiscally conservative and not pay yourself the big bonus, so that you can have sustained, steady employment of people, right? And can you retrain and upskill the employees who are at risk from AI? Can you help them learn how to scale their current jobs with AI? So instead of getting rid of them, you help them become 10 times more productive without having to empty out seats, right? If you do that well, if you can help them learn how to scale their own work with AI, it's going to be more costly in the short term to keep them employed. But if those people become good at what they do, if they get good at AI, they can take on 5x, 8x, 10x more work without losing their jobs, and your company gets better results. Right? Your company can do more. Your company can make more money with the same number of people. So are you willing to make that investment in your people today to get them skilled up with AI? As a marketer, because most of you are marketers, from a marketing perspective, everything that can be AI will be AI. Companies are just going to spend money like crazy on this stuff, and everything that they can turn into AI, they will, because it costs less. So if you are a marketer who wants to differentiate yourself, double down on the things that don't scale. Right? AI is all about scale. Double down on the things that don't scale. Experiential marketing, where you create real-world experiences, are going to grow in importance because it's going to be unique and different and compelling, and it doesn't scale. Right? You can't give the same experience to millions of people. You can only give the experience to the people who show up at your pop-up shop on 34th and 5th. Right? Influencer marketing will continue to grow because personal brands and individual personalities will differentiate a company from more generic AI content. AI can't be a person as well as a person can be a person. Side note, if you are not growing your own influencers inside your company, inside your marketing department, you are missing the boat. You've been missing the boat for a while, but today's a great day to start. And finally, let's talk about societal changes. These probably will not happen globally, so look for societies where these changes do happen, and if it is within your power to relocate, if you have the resources and the ability to do so, you might want to relocate to places that do these things. The first big short-term fix for AI's impact will be universal basic income, likely and sensibly funded from corporate taxes. Corporations will be vacuuming up most of the money generated by AI, so they'll have even more money to spare than they already do, and they already have quite a lot. Corporate profits after taxes in the USA have increased by $1 trillion per year in the last 5 years. I'll have a link to the chart if you want to go check out the chart. There's a lot of money to be had to fund these initiatives if a society is willing to do so. So, universal basic income is the first. Second, those universal basics are going to go a long way towards alleviating societal pressures, right? Reducing unrest. Things like basic housing or basic food, right? If you have a place to live, even if it's not super nice, and you have food to keep you alive, you're less likely to resort to violence just to meet your basic survival needs, right? If you are starving on the street, you will take actions to survive. They may not be legal, they may not be peaceful, but you will do what you need to survive. I mean, I saw some politician the other day talking about how they give $10,000 to people to move out of their house or whatever. I'm like, that's stupid. You can buy a portable prefab house on Alibaba for $5,000 made from a shipping container. Is it nice? No. It's going to keep you alive. A government, instead of handing out subsidies, could invest in hundreds of thousands of these things for less than the other programs are recommending if the will of the people compelled it to. If you build cities of inexpensive housing, people will go there because they want a place to live, right? And to be clear, I'm not saying everyone has to live in basic housing. I'm not talking about like communist Russia. What I'm saying is that there should be a bare minimum we offer to each other as human beings that will reduce the risk of civil unrest and reduce the impact of profits over people. If you have the means to afford more, you should absolutely enjoy the lifestyle you can afford. But for a whole bunch of people, the basic, a shipping container house would be a luxury. This was a long piece, but it's the foundation of what we can do in the early years of the intelligence revolution to make AI our partner, not our enemy, to reduce the impacts of AI long enough for the rest of society to catch up, long enough for those new jobs that we can't imagine to spring up, and to help the population make the transition into the intelligence revolution, and to make the most of the technology for ourselves today. You can take initiative on the personal actions today. Your company may or may not take action on the organizational initiatives, and if your nation takes action on the societal initiatives in a meaningful way, count your blessings and keep electing those people who are making that happen, because you are in a rare place. AI is the most profound change to the future of work since the Industrial Revolution. I want to see you succeed in it. All right. What else happened this week? I had a piece this week on what makes a great conference event. It was a long piece. After a really good event and a really not so good event. So go check that out. Also did a live stream this week on updating your media kit. We talked about updating your speaker kit and stuff. And did a really fun exercise of building an ideal customer profile in the podcast this week, In-Ear Insights. So go check that out. It's linked in the newsletter. Let's see, jobs this week. What have we got? We've got data engineer at Paraton, data evangelist at Data Camp, data scientist at Globant, data scientist at Insight Global, director of strategy and analytics at Beyond Finance, Google Analytics analyst at Primary Services, Google Analytics subject matter expert at Inspur Solutions, head of MarTech at Harnum, program manager of Applied Analytics Decision Sciences, that's a mouthful, at General Motors, senior data analyst at eStaffing, senior data scientist at Apex Solutions, senior data scientist commercial analytics at Stella Pharma, senior digital analytics engineer at Rocket Careers, Tableau expert at DataSelf, and web analyst that's got to be German, specialization at Gother. Lots of jobs. Go check them out. Other things that happened this week. We have LinkedIn talking about how it assesses the value of generative AI features and the most in-demand jobs across all industries, which was an interesting piece. The in-demand jobs, let me pull it up here. The greatest increase in hiring for the following roles: care specialist, surgical technician, tax preparer, medical surgical nurse, secretary, sonographer, progressive care nurse, home health care licensed practical nurse, customer associate, and business administrator. And the most in-demand jobs of all: salesperson, registered nurse, software engineer, project manager, customer service representative, store manager, full stack engineer, cashier, and driver. So you can see we're firmly in the service economy right now. What else we got in the news here? Low quality ad content and post-click experiences from my friend John Loomer. Go check his article out. Whether should you or should you not be optimizing for AI-based search? Spoiler alert, yes, you should be. Kayak has some new AI features that let users double check flights with a screenshot, which is kind of handy. OpenAI published a whole bunch of private emails with Elon Musk in defense in their lawsuit, a blog post, which was quite funny to read. If you want a chuckle, that's one you can check out. And Microsoft bizarrely invoked the VCR in a motion to dismiss the New York Times AI lawsuit. So there's a lot of lawsuits happening about AI right now. They are unresolved. They will be unresolved for quite some time. So at least in the USA, there is no governing law yet that says what is and is not allowed. So we're waiting for all that to shake out. Upcoming events. I've got a Marketing Profits event this week. I'm doing prompt engineering for marketers. Then SMPS, the Society for Marketing Professional Services here in Boston in April. Lab Products Association in Nashville. SMPS in Los Angeles in May, followed by the Australian Food and Grocery Council, then a Marketing AI Conference, and then Marketing Profs B2B Forum here in Boston. So lots of events. If you're going to be at any of those, stop by, say hi. That is going to do it for this week's newsletter. Thank you for your time. I would love to hear your thoughts about what your take on the intelligence revolution is and what additional solutions, in addition to the ones I proposed, what additional solutions I missed that you think would be effective in blunting the impact of AI while society catches up and while we make the transition fully into the intelligence revolution. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.